Welcome to Andy Odovault, Dongle Madness, and today I'm going to be talking about these two things here that you see here, which is actually Venture Electronic Prime DAC and Venture Electronic Runabout POM. So this is in fact the latest stack offered by Venture Electronic. So first, let's just have a look at the price and the packaging itself. As you can see here directly from Venture Electronic, first let's just have a look at the Prime DAC. Okay, so this Prime DAC, you can opt to buy just the unit, which is this thing here, and it is priced at 99.8 US dollar. And you can also buy this Runabout 2BFE here, just this set itself at 298 US dollar. And you would notice that this thing is very thick, right? Because what we are looking at here is in fact a battery unit for this 2BFE, which is called Core Slim. And it is in fact a dedicated power bank to power up this 2BFE. But I would advise that it is always better to check on the packaging itself, because Venture Electronic will bundle in, as you can see here, many things. So if you decided to buy the whole package as it is, this whole thing here, all right, the price itself would be 397 US dollar, almost 400 US dollar, but you get so many things. For example, like, this is, which is the Prime DAC itself, Runabout, including the warp core, and also Megatron, it seems it. See that? And you also got this Monk SPC, which costs around 20 US dollar. So it is always to consider your purchase that, like this, I always go for the full package itself, because let me just tell you this thing here that you see, they are designed to work together. It is the best way to use them. Now let's talk about the configuration itself. First, for this Prime DAC, just to make it simple, this Prime DAC, as you can see here, it is in fact, if you look from this perspective, identical to VE Megatron. And I don't have to, say much about this, because this is something which I really love. It has been released over a year ago, and this is in fact one of the serious DAC amp which Venture Electronic has released and has been well received. In fact, I love it so much. And in fact, it is pretty much identical spec-wise, this Megatron and this Prime DAC, with some exception. First and foremost, let's just have a look here. Okay, both of them are built on ESS subray ES9018K2M, with an exception that this Prime DAC is in fact a dual DAC, and this is a single DAC. And I think most importantly is that also, when I check with the specification itself, they're pretty much identical in many ways, with an exception of that dual channel thing, and also a bit of management on how it manages the power and output itself. So what I'm trying to say is that, in fact, if you remember correctly, especially for owners of VE Megatron, one of the biggest issue with VE Megatron is the floor noise. Because, let me just put it this way, this is pretty much a very raw implementation of the same DAC. And throughout feedbacks which has been received from many users before this, and for the fact that Megatron was in fact designed and optimized to run on headphones or very hard to drive item, it is not so suitable for sensitive IEM. Even as high as 64 ohm or sensitivity above 100, Megatron has always been, not suitable for IEM. So Venture Electronic apparently listened. And then what they did was that, they revisit the same design. They decided to actually improve upon it. And simply put, I would say that this Prime DAC is in fact a refinement over Megatron. One of the key elements that has been actually changed by Venture Electronic when it comes to this Venture Electronic Megatron and this Prime DAC is that the power delivery itself. You see this Megatron here, okay, it is in fact rated at 4.7 VRMS. And in order to actually fine-tune it a bit so that it will be a bit more suitable with usage of highly sensitive stuff, this Prime DAC is in fact now rated at just 4 VRMS. Fairly still powerful, I would say. And in fact, if we look at the configuration here, let me just put it side by side. Okay, this is at the front. Okay, so you would notice that this Megatron offers something like this, which is 2.5 mm balance and 4.4 mm balance, and this is 3.5 mm single-ended, which also serve as a microphone line in. Okay, but prime DAC, you would notice that there's no more 2.5 mm balance, and I don't have any issue with it because to me, in the world of balance jack, 2.5 mm balance is definitely something which is I consider as being a legacy now. 4.4 mm balance is more popular, so this is where you have it. And then in fact, you're gonna have here 3.5 mm single-ended, and this is a dedicated microphone line in. So yes, definitely, if you have a need for a DAC which support my microphone line in, both of them have it. Okay, and then at the back here, you would notice that one of the key difference between these two is that also Prime DAC now offer the ability to use SPDIF. Okay, you notice here the data port remains the same, and you can also do power support for this Venture Electronic Prime DAC and also Megatron, just in case if you run portably. For example, if you're connecting to external source which is less powerful, you can actually supplement the power for either one of them so that they will be running a bit smoother and with less potential for draining the host too much. Because if you run without charging, okay, potentially the power itself, the power draw to the host, especially if you connect it to a phone, might be a bit taxing. Okay, and then let's just have a look here. The switches here. You would notice that this switch for Megatron is in fact to toggle between line in and phone out mode. But you don't have to do that anymore in this Prime DAC, because essentially, as the name implies here, which is pure DAC, this is in fact designed precisely with the mind of, should I say it function as a pure DAC to feed external amp. So in fact, if you look at this 4.4 mm balance, this is in fact a dedicated line out. So let me just talk a bit about the differences between these two. Okay, I have tested this extensively, and in fact, I would say that the 4 VRMS power, if you decide to use this Prime DAC independently, it is always best to use this 3.5 single-ended, because this is where the full power is actually being turned out. Because if you connect your earphone or headphone directly to this 4.4 mm balance, it is not suitable because the output has been toned specifically for line out function. So just don't use it for direct listening. It is always best to use this 3.5 mm SE, and it is quite powerful in fact. So if I must say that if I were to do comparison here, okay, for example, when I use this VE Megatron, connect it directly to the 3.5 mm single-ended, and especially when using highly sensitive stuff, earphone like hybrid or something like that, attaching it to this even 3.5 mm single-ended or this 4.4 mm balance would emit audible noise, floor noise. It is definitely something which is very annoying, and you'll be forced to use something like this, which is an impedance adapter. Okay, and the output is just so damn powerful. On Windows, I have to crank the volume, let's say, to the lowest, which is at 2 out of 100, which is a super crazy thing. Whereas when I use Prime DAC, the noise is totally gone now. So I am happy to say that yes, if you want something which is capable of handling very sensitive hybrid, Campfire Andromeda, or even let's say some of the hybrid that which I have, which is usually under 16 ohm, this Prime DAC would definitely be more suitable. Okay, but let's just talk the biggest appeal for this Prime DAC and this runabout here. Okay, looking at the runabout itself, the spec, as you can see here, this is some serious shit we are talking about. Okay, first, let's just have a look here at the stack. I have already actually attached them together all right, with this padding here, which Venture Electronic has provided. And also you get this very nice looking interconnect cable, which is 4.4 mm balance end to end. Okay. And you would see that first the interface itself. At the front here, of course, this is a volume knob. Okay. And you have two output here, which is 3.5 mm single-ended and 4.4 mm balance. Okay. And then at the back here, you have this on and off power and just one dedicated line in, which is actually just 4.4 mm balance. So you would notice that this prime DAC here, I mentioned earlier, the line out is 4.4 mm balance, gold here, you would notice. And you're going to see the same thing here on the Runabout plus 2BFE. So they are meant to work together. Okay, so and here the power, all right. And one of the key element, for this Runabout is that even from the previous iteration of Runabout, it has always come in this package here that you can see, which is with warp core. And this is the latest version of the warp core, which is a very high capable lithium ion battery, same kind of battery that you would expect from higher end mobile phone, which means that you can always charge it anytime you like. And in fact, as for the usage itself, for example, when driving something which is highly demanding like this magnetic planar that you see here, okay, I have found out that this Runabout 2BFE together with warp core, driving those headphones at proper listening volume would last at around up to 24 hours for optimal performance. It can actually push beyond 24 hours up to perhaps even 40 to 48 hours, but it is always best to charge it, okay, when it comes at around 24 hours, because then the battery would be always in the optimal power state. Okay, charging is very simple. With the included charger by Venture Electronic, you just plug it in here, okay, to the wall, and then it only takes 4 hours to charge the whole thing, which is quite impressive. I would say the charger is quite fast. Okay, and the uniqueness of this Venture Electronic 2BFE is that you would notice that even Venture Electronic would say that don't run this Runabout 2BFE directly, okay, from the power, because one of the reason of using the battery is that battery has always been proven to be the best power feed when it comes to regulated power, which means that it is almost impossible to get the sort of noise, all right, introduced by line in of power, especially when you connect to the wall, because we know that wall power usually would introduce some sort of noise or static or anything like that, unless you use a dedicated power regulator, especially when it comes to usage of dedicated desktop DAC amp. Okay, so that's one. And let's just have a look at the specification itself. As you can see, the rating power for this Runabout Plus is in fact at 10 VRMS coming out from this 4.4 mm balance. So that is definitely super powerful. Okay, and half the power, outright power, from this 3.5 mm single-ended. Okay, but most importantly, the power torque per channel is in fact rated at 3000 milliwatt per channel from this balance, and 780 milliwatt of power from this single-ended. So meaning that for anything which is, like, say, not difficult to drive, even the single-ended port is super powerful already. Okay, and definitely this is one of the key thing that why you want to have Runabout 2BFE. Okay, now let's just have a look at the rest of the feature here. We see the signal to noise ratio for this Runabout 2BFE is in fact quite okay, not exactly stellar, but then again, if you are familiar with Venture Electronic product, they are not all about measurement or anything like that. They are more about output itself. So 106, or should I say dB of signal to noise ratio is definitely very fair. Okay, and the topology itself, what's inside. Okay, I haven't opened up this thing because I am not the type who like tinker around to find out what's inside, but I would just say that The design for this runabout is definitely dual mono, which means that everything is operating singularly on each left and right to actually emit the sort of output being churned out to the headphone or IEM. So definitely that is something that I would consider as discrete power delivery to each channel. Okay, now let's talk about the sound itself. How does this prime DAC itself sounds like first? Let's talk about the DAC itself. Okay, if you are already familiar with Venture Electronic Megatron, it is, I'm just going to put it this way, that they are pretty much identical, similar in the way they approach the sound curve itself, the tone and timbre balance, and the tuning. So what I'm trying to say is that just like Megatron, this prime DAC is definitely neutral, natural, organic, and most importantly, analog sounding. Yes, so what it means is that I am not hearing any kind of digital element to the sound itself, despite the fact that this is in fact made from a DAC which is not something which I prefer, which is ESS Sabre. Some of you might have known me that I always prefer something like AKM or even R2R, okay? But then again, I always also mention this. When it comes to DAC, the most important thing is the implementation. And I must say that when it comes to this aspect, Venture Electronic really knows what they're doing. Even though they're using a very old ESS Sabre DAC, which is, ES9018K2M. Perhaps the biggest improvement that this Prime DAC offer over this Megatron is in fact how clean the sound is right now, even for highly sensitive partners. So as I mentioned earlier, okay, this Megatron does not work very well with sensitive IEM. And in fact, if I will subject it to, let's say, some sort of very silent type of music, and in fact, the moment I plug in highly sensitive IEM into Megatron, I would immediately hear the floor noise, but not this Prime DAC. So definitely, I would say that is a huge plus already. One of the key things toward, proper and better sound is always try to reduce the noise level. And Prime DAC did it really, really well. In fact, it is perhaps one of the best right now. As for the rest of the sound presentation of this Prime DAC, definitely I would say that this Prime DAC is among one of the most analytical sounding and resolving DAC I have used so far. In fact, it is an improvement over this VE Megatron for the simple fact that it now presents the sound a bit more cleaner. Okay, as simple as that. So what I'm trying to say is that the way it resolves the dynamic itself, which extend really well from one end to another end, from lower frequency, mid-range, all the way to upper frequency, the transient of the dynamic, the micro dynamic itself is very well resolved, even when using this highly demanding headphone here. And especially when using this Fostex T40 RPM K3, my most difficult to drive headphones, I was able to pick up micro and macro details properly. Okay, now let's talk about how does it sound like when connected to this Runabout 2BFE. They are meant to work together, okay? As simple as that. You see, the only reason that I would use Prime DAC directly is when I am driving something which is easy to drive, just like this, my favorite here, which is Venture Electronic Monk Go Final. Just plug it directly to this 3.5mm single-ended, and I can already use it properly. But when I start to use all these headphones here, or even let's say I want to switch myself into critical listening mode, definitely I'm just gonna switch on this Runabout 2BFE, connect them together, and the best part is that this, first and foremost, like I say, they are designed to work together in harmony. Okay, you can actually attach it to a different amp or something like that because this is a pure DAC, but it is always best to connect it to the partner here because this Runabout 2BFE is a very transparent amp. Okay, it does not add any kind of coloration. It does not alter the sound frequency coming out from this Prime DAC. So in fact, the similar sort of sound presentation which I am hearing already from this Prime DAC is in fact amplified properly, so that now what I am hearing is that especially when using all this difficult to drive headphone, the expansion of the dynamic of the headroom itself. Okay, so what I'm feeling right now is that a wide open sound stage. It is already very technically competent, okay, when it comes to resolution, details, and imaging. But for something which is, let's say, this type of Sennheiser HD 650 here, what I'm hearing is that in fact, this HD650 becomes analytical. So if you're familiar with HD650, this thing is not easy to sound analytical because natively HD650 is organic sounding, kind of a bit warm compared to these other two. In fact, both of these are warm sounding, but that element of details and resolving and the resolution itself is definitely much more improved when I use this HD650 through this runabout 2BFE, because that sort of power, 3000 milliwatt, is no joke, okay? And that is rated at 32 ohm. So when we go, let's say, up to this 300 ohm, as you can see here, I am getting actually around 330 milliwatt of power per channel. And in fact, if I use anything up to, let's say, 24 ohm here, in fact, it sounds amazing with this HE400SE. It is rated at around 3000 milliwatt. In fact, more, because this is less than 30 ohm. So I must say that the very best result that I am getting from this 2BFE is in fact with this guy here, for stack T40 RPM K3. And the reason that I'm saying that is because this T40 RPM K3 is in fact optimized to sound the best with 3000 milliwatt of power per channel precisely. So finally, I was able to hear the full potential of this magnetic planar, this legendary magnetic planar. But how about driving easier to drive stuff? So I do have quite a lot of IEM, and I attach it also to this runabout 2BFE. And in fact, it is always best to use this if you have an IEM which scale really well with power. For example, like Tanjim Zero, okay? Or even, let's say, Final Audio A5000, or even Tangzu Heyday, that magnetic planar, okay? And that is the sort of kind of combination which really blows my mind. So how does this Prime DAC and Runabout 2BFE compare against the rest of the competition? I must admit that my experience with this sort of stack is not so much, kind of a bit limited, because I am a dongle person most of the time. I use a portable device, but when I do sit at my PC, okay, I have actually used several type of desktop setup. And first, of course, I would just like to compare against VE own Megatron here, which is in fact, I already mentioned to you the sort of sound that comes out from this Prime DAC and Megatron. So just put it simple, this Prime DAC is a cleaner sounding Megatron. As simple as that, okay? And in fact, I have used this Megatron together with this X Duo MT602, which is a 1005 milliwatt hybrid class A tube amp, okay? Again, the key difference between those two is the tuning and the cleanliness of the sound itself. Definitely after receiving this, in fact, I haven't switched on the Megatron together with this at all. In fact, I have put this aside because definitely this stack sounds a lot better than the combination of that two. It is cleaner, it is analog, and it is very analytical at the same time. The next comparison would be against a stack which I have probably 2 years ago, and it is in fact a duo of topping D10S and A50S, as you can see here. And in fact, I had it for just quite a short period of time. I didn't like it, in fact. Yeah, it is powerful, very analytical, and in fact very resolving, but it is actually very lifeless sounding, because if you are familiar with topping sort of tuning, they are so very engrossed with the sort of measurement kind of approach. So which means that at the end of the day, you're going to get something which is very sterile sounding. It is definitely, clean, sterile, and very resolving, very analytical. But when it comes to synergy factor, attaching it to something which is like, say, for example, even this Hi-Fi-Man HE400SE or even Atimotic, what you're going to get is that a clean output which is practically lifeless. It doesn't have any kind of density to the sound itself. It is in fact lacking the element of music. And that is, I think, the reason why I want to listen to music itself. I want to get, immersed and engaged to the music. But with that topping stack, despite being powerful and clean, I just don't like it. And then after that, for quite a while, I also have my most powerful stack. And in fact, as you can see here, it is a stack of i5 Zen DAC version 2 together with this i5 Zen Can. And this thing is quite powerful at 15 VRMS. Okay, so very powerful. But you want to know what? I no longer have it as well. And the reason is that it's quite simple. The most surprising part about this stack of i5 Zen is that I find it not as resolving as this. Okay, it lacks resolution. And in fact, I would say that it's kind of a bit too warm for my taste. I do love analog sound. I do love organic sound. But that stack of i5 is in fact just too warm for my taste, and it does not synergize very well with the sort of this Sennheiser HD650 because this is already warm sounding, and that i5 stack is already warm sounding. And perhaps the biggest disappointment that I have with this i5 stack is that in fact the sound stage itself, that thing supposed to have a lot of power, okay? 15 VRMS running on full balance circuit. But then again, when I listen to headphones or even IM, I was really surprised that X Duo Link 2 balance, a dongle actually sound wider than that stack. It doesn't make sense. So not long after that, I sold it off. The next comparison which I had the pleasure to test was in fact does not belong to me. It belongs to my good friend, which is Felix. And I have to thank him to allow me to listen to his wonderful stack. It is in fact a Geshelli DAC, this big, Genok. And in fact, it was paired together with Venture Electronic owned Defiant. And Defiant is definitely much bigger than this Runabout 2BFE. It is in fact, more than double the price or even triple the price of this 2BFE. And that combination of, Geshelli DAC and Defiant is definitely something which I would consider as the most resolving stack which I have listened to so far. The combination is just simply mind-blowing. It is very analytical and very resolving. At the same time, the musical element of it is definitely there, especially when using highly, adaptable or highly scalable listening partners. But I would say that how much different between this Prime DAC and Runabout 2BFE with that stack is that definitely on the outright power itself. You see, when it comes to highly scalable headphone, I must admit that Defiant does it better, okay? Because the definition on the authority of the sound itself would appear, more crisp and sharper on that Defiant stack, okay? But I would say that if I am not comparing them side by side, I would not feel the difference at all because this is already something that I would consider as being ultimate. And the last comparison would be against this FIO Q11, which I have tested recently. And I would just simply put it this way, no contest, okay? Because this thing is a lot more powerful and a lot more resolving and a lot more musical in the sense that, still being neutral, analog, and natural sounding. So Q11 is already a very, very good performer when it comes to integrated DAC amp solution, but it is also designed to be highly portable. It is also designed to be highly efficient with the power draw, okay? But this Prime DAC and also Runabout 2BFE is in fact a Purist device. So it does not sacrifice on the element of power draw. It is in fact running on 16.8 volt of power as opposed to 5 volt of power from Q11. So that alone would translate into the output itself being highly resolving with this, yet also highly musical. But if you are not comparing again, side by side, Q11 is already very competent. But if you feel that Q11 is not enough, then this is what I would recommend. Okay, now let's just wrap things up. As you can see here, this Prime DAC and this Runabout 2BFE is in fact my current reference when it comes to sound. So whenever I'm testing or using headphones or even IEMs, highly sensitive IEM, this is the first unit of sound system which I will use over everything else that I have owned. So I have so many dongles, which is only something which I would use when connected to my phone. But when connected to my PC, okay, I would just simply use this Prime DAC. In fact, sometimes I would just simply put this thing inside my bag and carry it around with me because the sort of sound quality that it offers definitely worth it for me to carry it around. And for the fact that it is battery powered, like this from this warp core, and will last, up to 24 hours, even running on hard to drive headphone, it is easy to carry it around. So definitely, if somebody were to ask me, I am not satisfied with dongles and stuff like that. I need something a bit more resolving, musical. without a doubt, my first recommendation would be this stack of Venture Electronic Prime DAC and Runabout 2BFE.